that what you're describing is the process that we all went through, because you don't want to even go down that route. You're like, maybe it's this. Maybe in my head I was like, maybe she's being blackmailed. Maybe she's scared they're going to kill her. Maybe like you said, she just wants a quick conclusion to all of this. Maybe she's still in shell shock and is actually not controlling anything at Turning Point, was my initial suspicion. And just on paper, she's CEO, but she's actually just home crying every day. And like behind the scenes, like, Tyler or Justin. I went through that whole thing. And for me, I never wanted to arrive at Erica being suspicious. I abstained from the like, oh, she's wearing hot pants with JD Vance. None of that matters to me. Because I don't think people understand.
Over the past 9 months, we've uncovered what critics describe as a series of troubling patterns involving Erica Kirk and TPUSA. According to those critics, heartbreaking moments were repeatedly tied to fundraising efforts, raising serious questions and sparking heated debate online. But one strategy that reportedly appeared just days after the UVA event stands out from the rest, and some people believe it's still being used today.
I needed it as a part of my grieving process not to accept that plausibility, because then for me, beyond just having lost Charlie and having to wake up to, and I then had to wake up to the idea that Trump betrayed him in a way, and Kash Patel, everyone is betraying him and not seeking more investigation. What I had to go through to pursue that, I had to grieve again, right? Because I knew how much Charlie wanted love. Like, I have these messages, like I was helping Charlie draft text messages and what should I say? So I had to.
Critics say Erica Kirk included one of her late husband's personal love letters in a fundraising email, arguing it was designed to create a stronger emotional connection with donors. If this sounds surprising, some observers say it wasn't an isolated incident. Candace Owens later revealed the contents of the email, and the response was sharply divided. Some people criticized Candace, while others didn't realize a very similar fundraising email had reportedly been sent just 2 weeks after September 10th. Candace said she was grieving at the time and chose to give Erica the benefit of the doubt, even publicly defending her.
Grieve again and go, okay, I need to like really just follow the facts here, and that's all I've done. And it's landed me at she's remarkably suspicious, not because of the way she dresses, not because of whether or not she's crying enough. All of that kind of paints a picture that makes people uncomfortable, but just objective lies that I can't comprehend. Why would you lie and tell the public? And I think for me, the most explosive one that no one wants to address by calling me a monster. Why would you lie and say that the surgeon told you or told Andrew that he had a Superman neck and all of this stuff that objectively did not come from the surgeon? It came from Erica. And why would you lie and tell me that Andrew went rogue and sent that message when you did it with?
Here's what Candace posted on X. Candace didn't hold back with her reaction. She wrote, "Sharing private letters from your late husband for the express purpose of fundraising is as tasteless as it is classless, and I am without patience for those pretending otherwise. There is nothing beautiful about this. It is shameless emotional manipulation for money, made worse by the fact that these emails are not even authored by her." Then we get to the email itself, the one that sparked so much discussion online. It begins, "What I wouldn't give for one more love letter from Charlie. One more handwritten note left beside my coffee before he rushed out the door. One more folded piece of paper on my pillow before he had an early flight. One more moment where he intentionally set aside the noise of the world just to remind me that I was loved."
I do also want to address people who are inundating me speaking about Erica Kirk. And I think the reason why this was catalyzed was because of a fundraising email and text messages went out, and people found it to be distasteful and like fundraising off of his death. Okay, first and foremost, the reason why I said, and I meant it genuinely, was to pray for Erica a couple of days ago. And I said she is stepping into a role as CEO and the chairman of a company.
The message continues. "About this time last year, Charlie and I sat together on stage at the Women's Leadership Summit. And by the way, that summit is coming up. Critics pointed out the timing, noting that the fundraising email appeared as the event was approaching and argued that the overlap was significant. The email goes on, somewhere during that conversation, I mentioned the notes he would write to me. He would write them whenever he honored the Sabbath. He never missed one. Sometimes they were only a few sentences, but they carried such deep reverence. He'd hand me words that felt sacred. I saved every single one. The email then shifts back to fundraising. Turning Point USA. Support Turning Point USA. Click here. It closes with a personal note. P.S. I read all of Charlie's love letters even slower now. We were never promised gray hair and rocking chairs. Click here to donate. That combination of a deeply personal message alongside a donation request quickly became the center of the controversy.
A company that got bigger than Charlie, by everything that I am understanding and just having been there, I saw it happening. And a company that she's going to have to learn in 4 seconds how this whole thing's where it is a machine. Okay. Those emails that you saw or that was not written by Erica Kirk. That will be an entire department. And these are emails when you fundraise. I've had fundraising emails go out with my face and my name on them.
Many people missed exactly what Candace was criticizing, but her point was clear. She argued that the emotional story was being used to encourage donations, and that claim immediately sparked intense debate online. Blake Neff soon responded to Candace's post, and his reply added another layer to the public back and forth. Neff wrote, "Nobody has profiteered more off of Charlie's passing than you have, Candace, and you share plenty of Charlie's private communications with you. But there are a few important differences. You were not Charlie's wife. Your messages tend to be from half a decade ago or more." Neff's response continued, "I wonder why. You love referring to dates he went on and women he knew prior to Erica. There is very clearly no reason to do this except trying to humiliate Erica, and you were doing this even before you started accusing her of helping with what happened to Charlie. You do all of this to profit yourself." He didn't stop there.
They are not authored by Erica Kirk. And I want you guys to know that, right? I just think it's like, I don't know, it just feels so unfair to me to assign the amount of pressure that is on her right now. She has not come out and said anything to me that makes her suspicious, because I understand how that organ works. And I understand how people, when they are motivated by money, how they don't even think about these things. It can be so gross. I mean, I have really gotten into arguments with people when I felt that they were using my face and representing things, and I was getting pushback from the public. And I'm like, I would have never done this. I would have never made that decision. And yet I'm going to be the person that gets all the flack for the decision that you made. I've had those arguments. And so when I see this go out, irrespective of how you feel, you should know that those decisions are not made by Erica. That's what it means to step into a company.
Neff went on to defend Turning Point USA, writing, "Turning Point needs to raise money. It does that because it actually does things. It puts on multiple conferences a year. It organizes campus events and faith events. TP Action employs literally hundreds of people for ballot-chasing efforts in swing states. You've never done anything remotely comparable, and you couldn't because you have neither the talent nor the selflessness to do it. All you have is the narcissism to think that what Charlie built should have been handed over to you for free." That response immediately caught people's attention. Some critics argued that in defending the organization, Neff had effectively confirmed the purpose of the email. They pointed to his statement, "Turning Point needs to raise money," as reinforcing the idea that the message was, at least in part, intended to support fundraising efforts. Whether readers saw it as an explanation or an admission became another major point of debate. That statement only fueled more debate. Some critics argued it connected the emotional stories, the references to Charlie's love letters, and the fundraising appeals to the organization's broader efforts to finance its work.
Of that size and that scale. okay? Their focus is going to be something different. And she has had, I think, a tremendous amount of grace in the speech that she gave, which I thought was very inspiring. And we should similarly have grace, give her time to get her, first and foremost.
They pointed to Neff's own explanation as support for that interpretation. Candace, however, wasn't about to leave the exchange there. She fired back, writing, "The audacity! I know you ghostwrite for Erica part-time, so you're feeling personally attacked, but you are truly out of your mind to ever accuse anyone of making money off of Charlie Kirk." Candace then escalated her criticism even further. She wrote, "You raised over $250 million in Q4 of last year by shamelessly selling every piece of Charlie inclusive of a recreated tent of his passing scene for selfies." That claim quickly drew strong reactions and became another flashpoint in the ongoing public dispute. She continued, "Everything you share includes a donation link, and none of it is done in the spirit of trying to figure out what really happened to Charlie. No, that part is of zero interest to you for some reason. You callous losers wanted the investigation over since Erica uttered, 'I forgive him.'" Candace ended by pointing to what she viewed as another inconsistency. She wrote, "Remarkably, it seems the only item you're unwilling to put out for a public consumption is the alleged video of Charlie handing over the reins of the company to her, reversing course on every public statement he ever made about women climbing the corporate ladder." According to Candace, those issues only added to what she saw as a growing list of contradictions. Candace made it clear she wasn't finished. She closed that exchange with a final message, writing, "You have all of DC lined up to protect you, and the world sees right through it. From the bottom of my heart, I want you to know something. You guys will not get away with what you've done to Charlie and his legacy. You will fast learn that money and all of this swamp are powerless in a match against truth." But she didn't stop there. Candace then responded to one of the most common claims circulating online: the suggestion that she was only speaking out because she was jealous that Charlie hadn't chosen her. She addressed that argument head-on, writing, "Lastly, the 'you're not his wife' talking point. In case you haven't figured out, it has completely failed." She continued, "In fact, it reflects poorly on Erica. Yes, Candace Owens, Baron Coleman, and millions of other people around the world are not Charlie's wife. That is precisely why the public is disturbed, because people who are not his wife have, from the very beginning, expressed more interest in determining who the hell did this to Charlie Kirk." Candace concluded with one final remark directed at her critics. "You should dig deep for a talking point that doesn't further shine a spotlight on why the public fervently rejects the performance of his actual wife." Hope this helps. Those comments quickly spread across social media, adding even more attention to an already heated public dispute. One point that supporters of Candace often make is that she wasn't always a critic of Erica. In fact, they argue she was once one of Erica's strongest public defenders.
The adjustment in her life, she is a mother, first and foremost, right? This is what she was doing. She was a mom, and Charlie was on the road, and these were Charlie's concerns. Men carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, and they were following that. This was a faithful couple. This is a woman who consulted a priest and prayed when she felt that somebody had put a hex on her husband. And I just think everyone is being a little unfair by trying to assign so much ill will towards someone who hasn't done anything to warrant that. And I would have been the first person. If I felt that anything was there, I would have said something. Truly,
Candace had praised her speeches, spoken positively about her in public, and said she wanted to believe Erica's grief was genuine. According to Candace's account, her view changed only after what she believed was a significant inconsistency. And from that point forward, she said there was no turning back. Some commentators argue there were warning signs much earlier. Nick Fuentes was among the first public figures to raise concerns, sharing a screenshot of an early fundraising email with the subject line, "Here I am, Lord. I will carry Charlie's torch." The email began, "Patriot! I don't know how else to begin except with this. I miss him. Every breath, every heartbeat, every memory I now replay in my mind, I miss him." Alongside that message was a donation link, something critics immediately highlighted. The screenshot was posted on September 23rd, suggesting the email had likely been distributed only days after the tragedy. Critics argued this showed that fundraising efforts centered on Erica's personal story began very early, while supporters viewed it as a natural part of continuing the organization's work after Charlie's death. The differing interpretations quickly became another major source of debate online. Supporters of Candace argued that she simply needed more time before reaching her conclusions. They point out that while she was still publicly defending Erica and speaking positively about her, later allegations and reports caused her to completely change her view. What made the situation even more controversial, according to critics, were claims that Erica had participated in Zoom calls where merchandise sales, including replicas of the shirt Charlie was reportedly wearing when he died, were discussed in a lighthearted way. Those allegations have been widely circulated, but they remain disputed. Supporters of Candace argue that if she had known about those claims at the time, she would have stopped defending Erica much sooner. Now, critics say they see the same pattern continuing. They point to personal stories, references to grief, and emotional emails that end with donation requests, arguing that this reflects an ongoing fundraising strategy rather than the immediate aftermath of a tragedy. They also note that Erica serves as CEO, arguing that major messaging ultimately falls under her leadership and responsibility. For those critics, that has shifted the focus away from staff members and toward the organization's top leadership. Looking at everything that's been discussed, this is where critics say the bigger picture starts to come into focus. In their view, these emails were not isolated moments where personal grief simply found its way into a company newsletter.
In every capacity, and of course, I'm not in their marriage, but I know that Charlie was very happy with Erica. And I know that Erica was a reason she was pushing Charlie, as women do, to really think through his ideas and think through what it was that he believed in one way or the other.
Instead, they argue they reveal a consistent fundraising approach that has continued for months, making it harder, in their opinion, to see it as a series of unrelated decisions. Critics point to the recurring pattern they say appears throughout the emails: personal memories, emotional storytelling, and deeply intimate reflections, followed by a request to donate. They also focus on the timeline. According to those critics, fundraising emails began appearing within days of the tragedy rather than weeks later. They note the emotional subject lines, the personal language, and the fact that donation links were included throughout the campaign. From that perspective, critics argue the repetition is what stands out most. They say the same formula appeared again and again in supporters' inboxes. A personal story, a vulnerable memory, a reflection on loss, and then a donation request. Supporters of the organization, however, could view those messages as a sincere way to communicate during a difficult period while continuing to fund its operations. That difference in interpretation remains at the heart of the controversy. Critics argue there's an important distinction here. In their view, grief doesn't follow a marketing schedule, while fundraising campaigns often do. That's why they say this particular email drew even stronger reactions than the ones that came before it. Some observers felt earlier emails could be interpreted as Erica sharing her personal grief while serving in a highly public leadership role. Whether people agreed with that approach or not, they saw it as at least understandable in the immediate aftermath of a devastating loss. But critics say this email crossed a different line. They point to the inclusion of Charlie's handwritten love letters, private notes he wrote during deeply personal moments, and the fact that they appeared alongside a request for donations. Those letters weren't public speeches or prepared remarks. According to the email, they were personal messages Charlie wrote for his wife during quiet moments of their life together. Critics argue that using those private writings in a fundraising appeal changed the nature of the campaign and raised new ethical questions. Supporters, on the other hand, may view it as a heartfelt tribute that also encouraged support for the organization Charlie founded. That divide is exactly why this email became one of the most debated examples in the controversy. Critics, including Candace Owens, have argued that these fundraising emails were not personally written by Erica, but instead were prepared by staff members or others involved with the organization. Based on that view, they contend that Charlie's private words were not only used in fundraising appeals, but were also presented through messaging created by others, adding another layer to the controversy. Those critics also pointed to Blake Neff's response as a key moment in the debate. When Neff wrote, "Turning Point needs to raise money," it does that because it actually does things. Some interpreted that statement as a defense of the organization's fundraising approach rather than a response to concerns about the use of Charlie's personal letters. Others, however, could see it simply as an explanation of why the organization solicits donations. Critics also focused on the way Neff responded to Candace's post. Rather than directly addressing her criticism about using private love letters in fundraising emails, they argue his response centered on Candace herself, questioning her credibility, motivations, and relationship with Charlie. From their perspective, that shifted the discussion away from the underlying issue. Supporters of Neff, on the other hand, may view his comments as a rebuttal to Candace's broader accusations. That disagreement became yet another flashpoint in an already heated public dispute. Critics have also pointed to another detail that Candace highlighted: claims about a recreated tent display that was reportedly used for photo opportunities during fundraising-related activities. For those critics, that image became one of the most controversial parts of the broader debate. They argue it should have prompted far more public discussion, while supporters have disputed or defended aspects of those events. The broader criticism centers on what some online commentators have called the widow strategy. They argue the pattern was visible from the earliest fundraising emails. Nick Fuentes was among those who raised concerns on September 23rd, sharing a screenshot of an email with the subject line, "Here I am, Lord. I will carry Charlie's torch," and commenting, "This is disgusting." Critics argued that pairing such an emotional message with a donation request reflected a deliberate fundraising approach. Others, however, pushed back against that interpretation. Because grief is such a deeply personal and widely respected experience, early criticism of the emails was often met with accusations that critics were being insensitive, jealous, or politically motivated. Supporters of the critics argued that this dynamic made the fundraising strategy more difficult to question publicly, while supporters of the organization maintained that the messages reflected genuine loss during an extraordinarily difficult time. Those sharply different interpretations remain at the center of the controversy. Critics argue that the social cost of questioning the fundraising emails was incredibly high. In their view, many people chose to stay quiet, give the benefit of the doubt, and continue offering support rather than risk criticizing someone who had experienced such a public loss. Those who did speak out early, including Nick Fuentes and later Candace Owens, faced significant backlash from people who strongly disagreed with their conclusions. Candace has also said that she initially wanted to believe Erica's actions were sincere. She explained that she too was grieving and chose to give Erica the benefit of the doubt during that period. According to Candace, her perspective changed only after what she believed was a significant inconsistency, describing it as the moment the pink glasses came off. Supporters of Candace often point to that as the turning point in her public stance. Another issue raised by critics involves allegations that, while Candace was still publicly defending Erica, discussions about merchandise sales, including reported Zoom conversations concerning replicas of the shirt Charlie was said to have been wearing when he died, were taking place behind the scenes. Those allegations remain disputed, but critics argue they stand in sharp contrast to the public image being presented at the time. They say that contrast is one reason the controversy continues to generate debate months later. Critics have also focused on what they say has not been made public. Candace claimed there is an alleged video of Charlie handing over control of the organization that, in her view, would contradict statements she says he made publicly about corporate leadership. She questioned why, if such a video exists, it has not been released, while other deeply personal materials have been shared. At the same time, critics point to the inclusion of Charlie's private love letters in fundraising emails. They argue that personal moments supporting the organization's messaging have been made public, while other materials discussed by Candace have remained out of view. Supporters of the organization, however, dispute those conclusions and may see the situation very differently. After months of public exchanges, supporters and critics alike agree on one thing: the controversy has continued over an extended period. Critics argue they see a consistent pattern across multiple fundraising emails, while supporters view those communications as part of leading the organization after a devastating loss. The larger debate now centers on what those fundraising messages represent and why they resonated with so many donors. Whether people see them as heartfelt outreach or a calculated strategy depends largely on how they interpret the same series of events. Critics argue that strategies eventually become visible. Screenshots get saved, timelines get compared, and recurring patterns are examined over time. They also point to the recent shift in online discussion, saying that public opinion has evolved as more claims, responses, and fundraising emails have been brought into the spotlight. From the perspective of those critics, the central issue goes beyond politics or personal rivalries. They argue the real question is whether Charlie's private words, written as personal expressions of love to his wife, should have been used in fundraising emails, regardless of who approved that decision. Supporters of the organization, however, view those messages as sincere tributes shared while continuing the mission Charlie helped build. Erica Kirk serves as the organization's CEO, and critics argue that major communications ultimately fall under her leadership and responsibility. Based on that, they contend the repeated use of similar fundraising messages reflects an approved organizational approach rather than a series of isolated decisions. That conclusion, however, remains part of an ongoing public debate rather than an established fact. Now, we want to hear from you. What do you think about this controversy? Do you find it inappropriate to use deeply personal stories and love letters in fundraising emails? Or do you believe it's a reasonable way for someone to share their grief while supporting an organization? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this breakdown interesting, hit the like button and share this video with someone who might want to weigh in. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay tuned because we'll be following this story as more information becomes available. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.